We get so much email from all over the world about black criminality wildly out of proportion in their country, about black mob violence erupting in their country where nobody has the slightest idea of what's happening because they're still in the very, very beginning stages of denial, deceit, and delusion, where we've been looking at it here for 40, 50, 60 years. I'm thinking of emails that I get all the time from Ireland, England, France, Australia, and of course, South Africa. Now, I lost my appetite for America being the military savior of the world a long time ago. Maybe if we could figure out a way to have a war and limit it to 1 or 2 or 3 years, get in there, win, and get the hell out, maybe I'd feel different. But I didn't really sign up for these 15-year wars. And so when I look at these things around the world, I don't really feel like a lot of it is our business. A lot of it is the business of people in America. People who live there are going to have to sort it out. But there is a message for America in this incredible level of black mob violence and black criminality wildly out of proportion all over the world. There is a message for that to us in the States. Because the same denial, deceit, and delusion we see here, that what they see over there. And the lesson of South Africa is even more stark, more dramatic for us here, because that is where white settlers, white farmers, white citizens are being targeted every day for violence, threats, mayhem, chaos, burglary, robbery, and murder. And the reaction that we're getting to that violence in South Africa from people who live in the States who are looking down there, that might be the most shocking thing of all. So why don't we take a real quick magical mystery tour of a couple of places, hot spots around the world, to kind of give us an idea of what we're talking about here. And then let's head on down to South Africa, because they're really eager to share what some black writers in America are talking about when they look at that ridiculous level of black criminality there. Why don't we start down in good old Melbourne, Australia.
Over December, we've seen a number of separate incidents which have cumulatively given rise to this whole issue of African youth offending. Nonetheless, it has been occurring for a period of time. So there are 3 primary incidents, if you like. On the 13th of December, we had an issue down in St Kilda where there were a number of African youths who were involved in a brawl, if you like, a punch-up in McDonald's with some backpackers. They were dispersed. There were no significant injuries. No one wanted to complain about it. The backpackers were heading back overseas the next day. That's that issue. On the same evening, though, we had 3 criminals robbed by a group of African youths. They had their phones stolen and some personal items. Those matters are being investigated. They continue to be investigated, and we'll do everything we can to solve those. We obviously, a week later, had the Wyndham Airbnb party, for lack of a better descriptor, and the subsequent affray after that, where we had, up to 100 African youths out in the street. What happened then? On that evening, it was deemed by the tactical police commander at that time that the most appropriate approach was to disperse those youths. We had our operational response unit, our public order response teams there, and they were dispersed. Would I have liked to have seen people arrested at that time? Yes, obviously, if we could have, I would have loved to have seen more people arrested then, because we just dispersed the group. But let's not second guess that tactical commander on the street. So I support what they've done. We've now got a subsequent investigation flowing into that, and that investigation will continue to determine whether we can arrest anybody. We've had an assault of a police member then occur on Boxing Day in High Point. That was a horrendous assault, to be kicked in the face whilst arresting someone for a minor theft from shop, and then to have a group of African youths gather around them. That was horrendous. The member suffered serious bruising, a black eye as well. Again, we've investigated that matter, and the thug, the young criminal who committed that offence, has been arrested and remanded in custody. So we are dealing with each of these incidents as they occur. And then from there, we have the reporting about the Ecoville Community Centre and the fact that it's been damaged and trashed over, say, a significant period of time. The last 12 months, I'm told that area has been deteriorating in terms of public safety and damage. So what have we been doing? We already had an operation established from the 10th of November addressing those issues. We had increased community reassurance patrols. We also had investigations going on, and we had deployed local resources. Importantly, the local police had been working with those communities to provide that reassurance, looking for longer-term solutions. But that wasn't just a one-off incident that sprung up. That's been developing for a while. So we continue to address that. What are we doing now? Well, what we've done today, I've spoken with our crime command. We established last year our gang crime squad, where we put 20 extra staff into our anti-gangs division. That gang crime squad will now be able to be deployed to assist local investigators in dealing with the incident of African youth crime. They will be very focused on that. In addition to that, as you would all be aware, we've got an extra 3,135 police coming into the organisation over the next few years. We've allocated 24 extra police to Wyndham recently and another 17 to come up in the near future. In addition to that, we're working with the African community. We have 42 new special youth resource officers, and they'll be focusing on case management of high-risk offenders. Now, that's in addition to our existing resource officers that we have. So there's a fair bit happening there in respect to what we're doing about how we deal with the localised issues. Can I say, regarding the whole youth issue of African youth, this isn't something that's just jumped up in the last month. We've had those 3 primary incidents that have really been the catalyst to bring this to the public attention. But over the last, 2 years, we've been seeing this anecdotally, as well as the representation in the crime statistics. And we've continued to talk about it. We had 2 youth summits led by Chief Commissioner Ashton, if you recall, so that we could engage all of the community to address key issues. One of them was recent in November. So we continue to work through, engage with the community, the local communities, to try and find solutions so that we can be proactive about this.
We've done a bunch of videos about Australia. There's a lot of videos out there. Just an Australian kid. I used to regard Australia as one kind of like big suburb. You could walk places, go places without worrying about anything, without worrying about a bunch of the fellas coming up, punching you in the head, taking your stuff, mocking you, threatening you, killing you. That's what they're experiencing in South Africa now. That's why the guy we just saw, who's kind of the chief of police of Melbourne, he felt like a month or so ago, he felt like he needed to have a press conference to give the big picture of what's happening and what they're doing about it. You noticed he was using all the same words that we kind of hear here on this channel from time to time. That is, that's been happening a long time. Oh, we didn't really arrest anybody because we were too busy dispersing the crowd. So they're just at the beginning of the upslide of what's happening in that country, because I really don't see a lot of people in Australia that are aware of, they'd be totally within their rights to say, hey, listen, you're not allowed to break the law here. We don't care who you are, where you come from. You are not allowed to break the law. If you do, we're going to stick you in jail. We're going to put you in prison. Without a lot of causes, without a lot of solutions, without a lot of sob stories about your life history that caused you to do all these incredibly bad things. From Australia, why don't we go to France? This issue in France became even more interesting because I saw it on my Facebook page today that I went kind of back to look for it. The first thing that popped up was a big story from Snopes. The article on Facebook, it said, well, a whole bunch of black people went into a Catholic church during Mass, caused a lot of violence, mayhem, confusion, things like that in the church. And then the cops had to kick them out. And so Snopes gave that version of the video a big fat false. So that's not true. Well, what they did was they took this very, very narrow claim that somebody on some obscure website put up and said, well, this is happening there and this is happening there. And Snopes found one little thing wrong with the claim, so they declared it false. Apparently, there was not mass going on. But if you look at the video, you can't see it here, obviously, on this podcast. You're hearing a little bit of it in the background. What you see is a whole bunch of black people going into a church. Then all of a sudden, the cops show up. A whole bunch of black people being forced to leave the church. I think it's called the Basilica of St. Denis and Saint Denis. And there was pepper gas. They were using clubs to remove them. There was lots of defiance, lots of resistance. There was a cop lying on the ground. He didn't look like he was in very good shape. But if all you do is watch the Snopes thing, read the Snopes article, then it's like, well, this never happened, Colin. I mean, that's the liar's way out of all this, right? Somebody makes a very narrow claim, or maybe a comma is misplaced, or maybe a word isn't quite correct, and you come in and go, well, that's obviously incorrect because they use this word instead of that word, so none of that happened, and just please do not pay any attention to that video that shows that everything we just said is 100% false. A lot of clowns running around over there at Snopes. But Snopes is like everybody's security blanket, right? When reality starts intruding into people's lives, they go to Snopes and they go, hey, a lot of black mob violence in America and around the rest of the country. Snopes goes, the rest of the world, Snopes come in. Oh, no. So just don't pay any attention to those videos. We're Snopes. We know better than those lying videos. And we get the same kind of videos every day from Ireland. A lot of stuff going on in England. And everybody's saying the same story. It's like they're just going, what's happening? We don't understand what's going on here. How did these people get into our country? Why are they so angry at us? Why, we thought this stuff only happened in the United States. People in Ireland and England, I actually got some American very unhappy with me for reminding her of this fact once. People in Ireland and England and in Europe in general, they really got this morally superior thing going on about the way black people live in the United States. If you ask them, they will tell you that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And they think, well, that doesn't happen in Ireland, England, and Europe. We're a little bit better than that because we treat people with open arms. Well, I think maybe it's a little harder to find people to say that ever since the Muslim invasion of the last 24 months that is going to change. Well, Europe was already being changed. Just look at Mark Stein, Mark Stein's great book that is truer today than when it was written 10 or 15 years ago about the demographic changes in Europe, how it's totally transforming Europe. So this big invasion is not different, not a difference in quality. It's kind of a difference in quantity. It's just kind of moving up doomsday, when people in Europe are going to look around and go, hey, this is not our continent anymore. Not unless you think, Sharia law is an integral part of what living in Europe is all about. So let's get down to South Africa. Man, there's so many good books about South Africa. One of my favorites is Into the Cannibal's Pot by Ilana Mercer. Kent Brakey recently wrote one that you see on my videos once in a while. I put it up there. It's called Never, 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 and Never Again. It's set in South Africa. The backdrop of that is all the racial conflict and violence down there. And recently, Lauren Southern, I think she's from Canada, she went down to South Africa, with a film crew, talked to the white people down there who were being targeted for ridiculous levels of crime and violence. And why don't we listen to, and so there's a lot of stuff going on there, and there's a lot of people telling us what's going on. But it's not something that people are in this country, the people who run the major media outlets in this country, are overly worried about. but they're totally missing the main point, the total main message for us that we're going to get into in a minute. Let's hear this 1-minute clip from Lauren Southern and her little recent time down in South Africa.
There's no one who can help us, because this side of the earth it's bad for us. You can't even walk in the streets around. At night, during the day, they always rape you, or they beat you up. They're swearing at you in the language. They know you don't know the language, but they will come and swear at you. See on the news, shoot the Boer, kill the Boer. We are like just living also. We are like human beings, just like them. Just the color and the language is different. But why are they against us? Even black kids were beating my kids up, my 5-year-old. Told them this is not for you anymore. South Africa, it's for our people. We don't have a life anymore. They will make sure about it.
Have you tried to look into leaving South Africa?
If I can get a chance, I will go. If I can get a better life that side of the seas, I will go. Me and my 2 kids, I need a life.
So that was Lauren Southern. She just put a microphone in the face of they call them colonists now. The people that have lived, the white people who have lived in South Africa for a while. So if you ever see the word colonists, well, you can pretty much think Wakanda for that addition to our vocabulary. So she was describing rape and murder that's happening to these people, white people down there, on a daily basis. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but let's talk about one. I mean, we could do these stories all night and day, but let's just talk about one that was in the Daily Mail pretty recently. But let me just read the headlines and a few sub-headlines. Headline: the murder so brutal they shocked even South Africa. A couple was shot dead. Then their 12-year-old son is drowned in a bathtub full of scalding water. He was tied up and gagged before being murdered in the bathtub because he could identify them. The 3 men assaulted their father with a golf club and some kind of knife before shooting both of the adults. They killed the family dog. And when they caught the guys and took them to court, tell me if this sounds familiar, all they got from the guys was laughing, always laughing and smiling. It was one big fat joke. But again, I'm not bringing this to your attention so we can say, well, let's get the troops down, wherever they have to go, and let's set the world right and with American firepower. I don't think anybody actually suggests that, but I'm not really down with that either. But isn't the message of South Africa, isn't the message of this woman that Lauren Southern just interviewed, isn't the message that she's giving is that the world has turned its back on South Africa? The world has turned its back on the white people of South Africa because the world believes that anything that happens to them, they deserve. So they've made it very difficult to get a visa to leave South Africa, very difficult for a visa to enter into South Africa. Somebody just sent me an email from Canada where a couple from South Africa applied for political asylum in Canada on the grounds that if they returned to South Africa, they would be the victims of ridiculous levels of racial violence directed at them because they are white. The Canadian government turned down their visas, their application for asylum, because they said that was nothing but racist white propaganda, that white people are being targeted down there. I mean, we can't do enough stories about South Africa. Some people, but some people do a lot of stories about South Africa. Here's a story from The Root. Now, The Root is a black website. Lots of fellas and their lovely ladies doing stories about world events through the lens of race. And basically all the stories tell the same story, that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, whether it's in here, there, everywhere in between. Why don't we read a little bit of that story so we can really see the racial hostility and venom in America for white South Africans. And tell me if it differs, and you tell me, is there any difference between the tone and content of what you're about to read about white people in South Africa being targets and the white people in America who are also targets to a lesser but growing extent? Okay, this is the grapevine from Angela Helm. Headline: Crimea River of White Tears, White South African Colonizers. Recently, Lauren Southern, they call her a Canadian white supremacist, highlighted the perilous plight of white South Africans who gasp are being discriminated against. This in the very country known throughout the world for its racial tolerance! I don't really understand this sentence, but what we do see is the scorn and the mocking of white people and what they're going through in South Africa. I don't understand I don't understand this reference to the very country known throughout the world for its racial tolerance. They're not really talking about South Africa, are they? Anyway, back to the story. In a 7-minute documentary, this tone-deaf alt-right propagandist, they're talking about the lovely Lauren Southern, ruminates on the travails of white South Africans who are, quote, going through an intense crisis, unquote, parentheses complete with sad music in the background, in the very same country where their people colonized native South Africans into a brutal racial caste system beginning in the 1940s. Southern said these whites are allegedly being displaced and have to live in, quote, white settlement camps, unquote, on the outskirts of town because the nasty African National Congress-led government won't help them. We've done a couple stories on the ANC. I mean, we had a story that we did a video about Nelson Mandela. He was putting his fist in the air and singing the popular song of the ANC where the refrain is "Kill the Boers." And just a week or two ago, they had a guy in I think it was Johannesburg or maybe Cape Town, the guy who's head of the ANC youth movement, very proudly giving a public demonstration about killing white people, killing Boers, to much glee, to much excitement, to lots of dancing, to lots of jubilation. Let's get back to the article here from the Griot, the black website. Quote, whites in South Africa are being denied jobs and will soon have their land taken away without compensation, writes Southern. As a result, more and more people are finding themselves living on handouts in white squatter camps because they are routinely denied help. She then exposes these terrible conditions, whites living in one-room shacks with no electricity or water, none of which South Africa has ever seen. Oh, except in the infamous shanty towns where tens of thousands of black South Africans were forced to live in conditions that would make that shack look like the, quote, fucking Ritz. White people deserve it. Don't forget that. But the pièce de résistance, says the article, comes when Southern interviews a white South African woman who says she cannot walk around her neighborhood at night because the blacks will rape you, beat you up. She says her children are being teased by black children in their own language, which she tearfully cannot understand, so much so that she actually wants to leave the country. We are human beings, and, we are human beings just like them, blah, blah, blah. And then, that met with a particularly nasty retort. You don't say. The crazier part is how many South Africans and white Europeans were in shrill agony saying that what is happening to these deserving whites is the worst thing since Syrians bombed their own people with sarin gas. Again, this is like, that's kind of a little bit too obscure. I don't have any idea what that person's talking about. The question is, okay, this is back to the article. The question is, have these people, oh, she said these people, have these people no sense of history, context, or irony? Maybe white poverty is increasing because they actually have to compete with blacks for jobs. Maybe they don't work hard enough. Maybe they're just dumb and lazy. I don't know. Irony, comedy. What's really glaring is the sense of entitlement. Okay, now they're throwing this all. This is really meant for American audiences, right? What's really glaring is the sense of entitlement that white Americans and white South Africans both have. Let's see. What do they have in common? General wealth? Check. Some of the world's highest rates of incarceration and HIV? Yep. What else? Oh yes, a once legal but still pervasive racial caste system which gifts and curses whites into thinking they are so much of a god that the world owes them something. Here's an idea for these poor, sad white South Africans. Get a job, work harder, do better, don't rely on the government, stop having kids, pull yourself out by your bootstraps, go back to your own country. The gall of these people is truly amazing. So this woman, Angela Helm, and her avatar is a picture of Angela Davis with the button of Angela Davis from the 60s that says, "Free Angela." Nobody's hiding anything, are they? Nobody's pretending anything. Nobody's pretending that this article was really about people in South Africa. No, I mean, this article was clearly about white claims, increasing claims of white people and Asian people, young people, old people, gay people, straight people, Amish people, Eskimos, kitties, puppies, turtles, goldfish in this country, increasing claims that there's something really strange here. There's an increasing level of black hostility, black criminality, black violence directed at all kinds of people. And, I mean, nobody's hiding it. They're celebrating it. They're joyful over it. Isn't that weird to take some glee in all the problems that black people are inflicting on white people in South Africa? Is that weird? Well, it is weird, but again, not really that much of our business. As Ilana Mercer points out, our big message is you better look at the way the world is looking at South Africa, because that's the way they're looking at this enormous level of black criminality all over the world now. On some level, white people deserve it. They deserve it in Australia. They deserve it in France. They deserve it the most in South Africa. But what they don't deserve, anybody deserves what no one deserves around the world. It's the right to say anything that will make the black kids angry.